Over the past 7 years, I've recreated a lot of different movie scenes using Lego photography. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you all the different tips and tricks I use to basically create these really epic scenes, almost one-to-one with the real movies, both inside at home and also outside in sometimes really rugged terrain. So let's hop straight into it. But before we begin that, look what I got my hands on. That is the Star Wars Force of Creativity. This book, I've only just started reading it, but it is packed with so much cool stuff. Like, it comes with a case, and that's the book there. I'm gonna try to open this without damaging it. Hang on. Like, this is one of my favorite parts, is it has like concept art and everything of, like, you know, different Star Wars characters, which looks epic. I'm only a little bit through the book because I've been very busy, but there's a whole bunch of different, you know, Lego designers and actually people who worked on the film. And who knows, it might inspire a whole bunch of different Star Wars photography for me. So it'll be really interesting to see what else is in this book. This was very kindly gifted to me for my birthday from my good mates from high school, so big ups to them. But let's get into the actual video. Tip number one is pretty simple. It is analyzing the scene that you want to recreate. So you want to break down the shot as much as you possibly can. And what I like to do is, if it's a specific film like Lord of the Rings, I'll go through different iconic scenes and I'll find a frame that I think is either a hero shot, an interesting frame, or just something that has, you know, something epic in that scene. And I ask myself, is this something I can recreate through Lego photography? And if it is, then I start to analyze the frame a little bit more. So the main thing is studying the composition. For example, this Minas Tirith shot, I took a screenshot of Gandalf basically waiting for Gron to break through the gates. And I thought this was a really interesting frame because you can see like the spears and the different weapons the Gondor soldiers had in the foreground. And then you have Gandalf like kind of, you know, amping them up for what's about to come through. And I thought it was a really cool frame. So figuring out what kind of angle it's shot at, so we can see that it's shot at somewhat of a low angle because of course Gandalf is on Shadowfax. And then we have to look at who's in the shot. We've got Gandalf, Shadowfax, and then obviously we've got the Gondor soldiers. So obviously I've got all those figures when it came to Minas Tirith. And then you have to figure out what is in each layer of the frame. So you have the foreground, which is, you know, the spears and the Gondor soldiers, the middle ground, which is Gandalf, and then the background is parts of Minas Tirith. And once you've analyzed that and got your characters, then you want to save the frame either on your phone or a Google Doc to reference back to. Step number two is building the scene, which is the most enjoyable parts of the process. Usually if I want to recreate a shot one-to-one, I will shoot it in my garage. Like if I don't need a big dramatic landscape, then yeah, I'll usually shoot in my garage because I can control the light a lot more, I control the scene a lot more as well. And I'll usually resort to, you know, a practical background like a black backdrop, but I've got a whole wide range of videos shooting in the garage, so I'll leave a tutorial playlist up here for you to check out. Now, the enjoyable thing about shooting indoors is you can use this technique called forced perspective, and it's basically making something look a lot bigger than it actually is. Obviously, Lego is quite small, and the way I achieve this is usually using a telephoto lens or any millimeter that is over 50 mil, because technically it's either 50 or 55 mils, it becomes a telephoto. And basically, telephoto lenses does a great job at compressing images, and when you're doing that with Lego, it makes it look a lot bigger than it actually is. And one of my biggest tips is layering your image is so important, because if you just have one subject, like here's an example here where I just had the, you know, middle ground and I had the background, and it felt kind of flat. And then once I brought in a frame at the very front, it just completed the image and it made you feel like you're actually in their world. And of course, shooting through different objects or close to, you know, Lego objects definitely sells the effect that, you know, yes, you are in their world, and it also feels a lot bigger than it actually is. Now, if you can't shoot indoors, you've of course got the great outdoors, which is, you know, probably one of the easiest ways to do this. And if you can't recreate a scene from one-to-one, then it's basically a game of matching a location to the scene. So for example, Cad Bane, I couldn't really find a desert here in Auckland that kind of resembles Tatooine, where it's just like an endless desert behind him. So I went to Bethel's Beach and kind of used different elements of the landscape to create a really nice frame, basically. And although it wasn't one-to-one with the actual scene, it has its similarities. And my tips when it comes to Lego photography is always shoot in natural angles, such as eye level, low angles, or even top-down perspectives. Any angle that, you know, is natural or you see in films. You would sometimes shoot from this, you know, human angle where you're looking straight down, but most of the time it can take you out of their world and back into the human world, if that makes sense. So you really want to focus on natural angles. Tip number 3 is going to be matching the lighting. And this is where the reference image comes into play. You want to jump back to that so that you can see how this is framed and of course how it is lit. Now the best way I analyze these is I look at the highlights and the shadows and how it is represented in the scene. For example, of course, Gandalf has a few highlights on him and there's a bit of an orange glow just behind him. And it's got a kind of a blue tinge to it because it's nighttime. So I'll use a few different little lights to represent that. And it's all about experimentation, of course, especially if you're working indoors. You can move the lights around how you like and just basically figure out what lighting looks best and the closest to the scene. And I usually start with a key light, which is kind of like my studio light that I use all the time, and then I'll use little pocket lights here and there to kind of either fill in gaps or add, different things. As you can see in this Minas Tirith shot, that nice glow in the background is created from another little pocket light. And of course, if you're shooting outdoors, the best advice I can give is trying to match the weather conditions to the scene itself. I know it might seem blatantly obvious, but that's kind of what I do when trying to recreate a scene, is just matching the weather or the environment to the actual scene as close as I can. Now on to tip number 4, probably one of the most important tips, the camera techniques. And it's really important that you work on color balance. And color balance is basically, it helps whites look truly white. Because when you're in different, locations, weather conditions and such, you're gonna get a whole wide range of different lighting. And basically working on your color balance, so working with white balance, allows you to represent the actual location to the colors that your human eye sees. Because white balance can really make or break an image. And I've noticed that when I was doing my Rivendell photos, the white balance wasn't even close to the original films, and I was trying my best to re-edit it back in Lightroom, and it was almost impossible, and that was a big lesson. But when I did the Minas Tirith shot, I was very cautious to match the white balance to the actual scenes and, get the colors right from the get-go, and relying less on editing afterwards. Now, another great way to sell your image is look for effects. See if there is fire, smoke, add practical effects if you can, be creative with it, and don't be afraid to change things as well. Like, I couldn't shoot Deagle in an actual lake and get the photos I wanted, so I had to get very practical with this one. I had to get a fish tank, fill it with water and sand, and get a whole bunch of different grass and stuff to match it as closely as I could to the actual frame in the movie. If the scene can't be recreated one for one, then I definitely recommend capturing the character and the tone of the scene more than anything else. So an example of this is Mead's Wall. Now, the actual filming location for this shot was here in New Zealand, and I went to that location, but the weather conditions weren't even close to what you see in the film. So I realized that there would be no way to kind of color grade it to match the scene, so I focused more on recreating the frame and also the posing of the characters so that it could still emulate that feeling that you see in the film in some regard. And another example being Deadpool and the Skeleton of Wolverine. It doesn't snow here in Auckland at all, so I couldn't go to a snowy location for this scene, but what I did was I just took, the exact same kind of location, but during the summertime, because that's all I could do. Again, being cautious of how I pose the characters and making sure that they look as close as they can to the frame. It's just the snow that isn't there. So don't always stress about trying to match it one-to-one. The fun thing is that you can test out, new environments and new methods to recreate different scenes. And that's one of the most enjoyable things about Leica photography, is recreating, different iconic scenes in your own unique way. Now this is where we bring it all together, and that is the edit and the color grade. Now if you don't have Lightroom or a professional editing software, then you can definitely use the software that is built into your computer, or you can use it on your phone. And I always kind of go for boosting the contrast a bit, playing around with the shadows, and you really don't want to rely too much on color grading. I was very guilty of this, where I would kind of shoot things and not really care too much about the settings and be like, oh, I can fix it later in post. But all the heavy lifting should be done during the shoot. Getting the settings correct, checking your white balance, and making sure the frame looks as close as you can to the actual colors of either the movie or, all the lighting conditions that you're actually in. So then you're not having to spend hours maybe, trying to re-engineer a photo to match a scene where it's almost impossible. And of course, fine-tune the image until it looks really cinematic. Don't be afraid to put a really nice crop on there. I love to do that. Cropping is one of the biggest editing things I do throughout my images. I always crop my images most of the time. And the best part is you can compare your image with the final scene and see how close you got it, and that's one of the most enjoyable parts. And most important tip is to share your work. I was very afraid to share my work when I first started, as I was 16 years old at the time and thought, oh, a 16-year-old taking photos of Lego, how childish. But now I'm 23 and doing the same thing. But don't be afraid to share your work, because there is always something very unique with Lego photography, or even toy photography if that's something that you're doing as well. It's actually a fact that if I let my insecurity of like taking photos of Lego become the primary feeling, then these photos wouldn't be behind me. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't have this camera. None of this would have existed if I let my insecurity take over. So share your work. There's literally no harm in doing it. It's free. Yes, it takes up your time, but as long as you have fun and you like the image that you take, then that's the best advice I can give you. So yeah, that was just a little insight into how I recreate different scenes from different movies and a whole range of different locations. I have a lot more tutorials on a whole bunch of different Lego photography techniques and ideas, so make sure to go check that out. You'll see a lot more of these images on my Instagram, so feel free to check that out as well. And yeah, I'm gonna go head off for a shoot with the new Mandalorian Razor Crest, which is going to be super fun. So hopefully that goes well. But yeah, I will see you in the next part. Bye-bye.